Hello, everyone. I need to first say a couple of technical things. I was thinking of starting with dear participants and panelists and welcome to our conference, but I have to do this first, so just bear with me for a second. So we will have Turkish and English simultaneous translations for the panels. And for the English translation, please click on the interpretation icon with a world sign on the menu at the bottom of the screen, and then click on the English option. And for the Turkish translation, please click on again, the interpretation icon with a world sign on the menu at the bottom of the screen, and then click on the Turkish option. And you need to have the latest version of Zoom to have the English and Turkish translation options. So please do check the Zoom updates. And if you understand both English and Turkish, you can stay at the off interpretation channel. So after this technical announcement, I can start with saying, dear participants and panelists, welcome to Future of the University Conference. My name is Dr. Sonay Ban. I'm a cultural and visual anthropologist and currently an editor at Speak Up Platform, a CSO in Turkey. Along with my colleague, Dr. Emre Çetin Gürer from Koç University, we are happy and honored to address all of you today, as we have been co-organizing this conference for the last 8 months. Our conference is sponsored by the International Herbert Marcuse Society, and it is hosted by the Departments of Political Science and International Relations, Sociology, and Philosophy at Boğaziçi University. As most of you already know, today and tomorrow, we will have 4 online panels with wonderful academics and activists all around the world, including Brazil, India, the UK, the USA, and Turkey. And on Friday, June 24th, we will have an in-person closing forum in Turkish at Boğaziçi University South Campus with those who can make it. One other thing about the technical announcement, you will always and also be notified with instructions through Zoom chat box throughout the conference about how to use the translation properly, both in Turkish and in English. So please check your chat boxes frequently. So I will briefly mention a couple of important points regarding the need and the urgency of the conference without taking a lot of time, since we have a packed lineup of panels coming up. Despite the ongoing attempts to shape the university into an anti-democratic corporation, its future is not determined yet. While authoritarian attempts trying to confine the university into an oppressive neoliberal institution are dominant today, we believe the humanitarian core and egalitarian visions are still alive and resisting. The Boğaziçi University resistance against the anti-democratic rectorate appointments and restrictions on academic freedom is an empowering and resilient indication of the democratic potentials of the universities. The resistance has been going on for the last 535 days, which is 77 weeks, since January 2021. And our panelists will give more and better details than me shortly. All the constituents of the university, including the academics, students, and workers, have been incessantly resisting the appointed rectorateship and their unlawful methods of violating academic freedom, which mirror rampant authoritarianization and practices of surveillance and securitization of the current government in charge. Their resistance is a beacon of hope and a true sign of solidarity and inspiration for all of us. As the co-organizer of this conference, and alumni of Boğaziçi University, Çetin and I are proud to stand here in solidarity today among our professors, mentors, colleagues, and our fellow students. Ranking among the global events organized for the centenary of Herbert Marcuse's 1922 dissertation titled The German Artist Novel, and the 50th anniversary of Marcuse's 1972 Counter-Revolution and Revolt, our conference aims at solidifying the international dialogue among scholars who problematize the current conjuncture and explore the democratic potentials of the universities. Our conference takes its foothold from Marcuse's dialectical approach to universities, which critiques one-dimensional and alienating education while committing to its democratic prospects. It is also an attempt to bring together a broad range of perspectives from critical pedagogy and critical university studies, among others. So right now, there are several people that I would like to thank for helping and supporting us during the organization of this conference. So here we go. Çetin and I would like to thank our committee members from the hosting departments at Boğaziçi University, namely Assistant Professors Volkan Çiğdem and Gaye İlhan Demirel from the Department of Political Science and International Relations, Assistant Professor Saygın Gökarüksel and Professor Gürer from the Department of Sociology, Assistant Professor Yıldız Silyer from the Department of Philosophy, Fatma Kaya, doctoral student at the Department of Philosophy, for their help organizing the conference. Our special thanks go to Associate Professor Zeynep Kadirbeyoğlu from the Department of Political Science and International Relations, who is one of our panelists on panel 1 today, for her support, suggestions, and taking concrete actions on our behalf when needed as a committee member. We also thank Uğur Özbak for conference posters and technical support, Burcu Becermen and Deniz Cebe for simultaneous translations, Associate Professor Erol Köroğlu from the Department of Turkish Language and Literature at Boğaziçi University for his suggestions, help, and technical support, Assistant Professor Başak Taraktaş from the Department of Political Science and International Relations at Boğaziçi University for her support, suggestions, and for her friendship, Can Candan, MFA, faculty member in the Department of Western Languages and Literatures at Boğaziçi University, for suggestions regarding the conference, and on a personal level, I have to say that, for his constant mentorship. Assistant Professor Hüseyin Kuyumcuoğlu from Kadir Has University and from the Society for Practical Philosophy for chairing one of the panels and for technical support. And Seçil Aracı from the Society for Practical Philosophy for technical support. And Emeritus Professor Charles Reitz for his generosity. My biggest thanks go to Dr. Emre Gürer for being the best co-organizer. And we would like to thank Andy Lamas, GD, from University of Pennsylvania and from the International Herbert Marcuse Society for reaching out to Çetin and I, suggesting we organize an event Turkey sponsored by the society that we would like to do, for giving us any support we need, including reaching out whenever we need it, and I have to underline this, to many of our wonderful panelists we have the chance to hear today and tomorrow, and most importantly, for trusting us and encouraging us as his junior colleagues along the way. He's a true mentor and a wonderful guide for both of us. And we would all like you to join us in thanking him for who he is, even though, and I have to underline this very specifically, that he does not want us to put him on spot and praise him at all. So this is my only chance to do it, and I have to do it. So thank you, Andy. And now I want to leave the floor to Professor Arnold Farr from the University of Kentucky, who is the founder of the International Herbert Marcuse Society.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for this wonderful conference, and thank you for inviting me to say a few words about the International Herbert Marcuse Society and Marcuse himself in connection with this wonderful theme for your conference. Let me say a word or two about the society, and then I want to say a few things about Makuza's own work and how it connects to the subject matter of this conference. The International Herbert Makuza Society was founded in 2005 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And so a group of us came together in 2005 to have a conference on Makuza's very important work, Eros and Civilization, because that year was the 50th anniversary of the publication of Eros and Civilization. And as we talked, many of us have been teaching Makuza for years. And at the time, I was teaching One-Dimensional Man to some students in a seminar. And as we read through One-Dimensional Man, it seems as if Makuza could have written that book that very day, right? Although several years removed, the issues that Makuza grappled with and the analysis of our society provided in that book was 100% relevant at that time, and it is still 100% relevant today. And so at that conference in 2005, we decided to establish an International Herbert Makuza Society and meet every 2 years. And since that time, the society has grown in an incredible way. And so I'm very proud to be a part of it. So one of the things I wanted to mention is when we read Makuza, we read him grappling with a deep analysis of various, what I call, and Axel Horneth also called social pathologies, right? And so social pathologies are the various mechanisms in our society that prohibit the full development of the human being or the human person. They are mechanisms that prevent various individuals and social groups in our society from acquiring the resources that they need for self-determination and self-development. And so these are pathologies in our society. And the importance of your conference is this: you're talking about the crisis in the university. Well, the crisis in the university reflects the crisis in our larger society. Right? I think academics for a long time sort of thought that the university was sort of protected from the pathologies in our society, and sort of the university is almost like a city that sits on the hill and has an element of purity about it, but that's never been true, right? And especially in the context of capitalism that has tentacles that touches everything in sight. And so just as certain social pathologies develop in our larger societies, those pathologies filter into the university. Every institution in a capitalist society is almost designed to shape and mold individuals into instruments of capitalism or tools of capitalism. And that is also true in our universities. So universities do not escape the social pathologies that exist in our larger society. So hence the crisis in the university. And Makuza had a couple of things, a couple of important ideas regarding this. One thing is he makes a distinction between two forms of education that takes place in our universities. One is there's that form of education that is designed to help us develop a skill set for an occupation or a job. And that is necessary to the extent that we need to be able to support ourselves economically, right? But what has happened in the university is capitalism has sort of attempted to reduce all education to the acquisition of a skill set. And then once that happens, then the students become servants of capitalism. But there's also another function of education that Makuza talks about that is sort of being whittled down, and that is he uses the German term Bildung, which is cultivation, the cultivation of the self, the cultivation of freedom, the cultivation of a free society that is under attack in our society and in some of our universities. Students in the 1960s, during the student revolts in the 1960s, were aware of this. They were aware of the way in which their universities were beginning to reflect the pathologies in their society. And as a result of that, there was a kind of a protest against the university. And a desire to, in some ways, destroy the university. But Makuza opposed this attitude, right? He too was aware of the way in which social pathologies, repression, was entering into our universities. But the last thing you want to do is destroy the university, because that is sort of the last stronghold, the last institution where there's even the possibility, even the hope for critical thinking, critical analysis. If you destroy the university, then you've destroyed your last hope for the development of critical consciousness. And so Makuza wanted to save the university, but at the same time, the university had to be revolutionized for Makuza, right? Not only does it exist to help us develop skill sets, but there also has to be Bildung in our educational program. And so the task then is for us at this moment, in a Makuzian way, I think, to understand the social pathologies that are at work in our society and the ways in which they enter into the university and find innovative, brave, and creative ways to combat these social pathologies and to reimagine education, an education that really produces freedom, an education that produces critical consciousness, an education that helps us overcome the repressive mechanisms in our society. So I want to thank you for the invitation to be a part of this conference, and thank you for what you're doing and acknowledging that there's a crisis in our universities. And I'm very happy and I'm very proud to join you and support you in an attempt to address the crisis that is present in our university today. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Arnold, for your speech. So we have right now 10 minutes before the first panel starts. And so right now, we want to show you, like, we will meet at 4 Istanbul time, which is 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time and 6 p.m. India time. So we will meet you at 4, but during this 10-minute break, we will like to show you a video that is compiled out of Can Candan's photographs of the academics visual. So we will show you that, and we will all meet at 4. And I should say that when we meet, we will have our first panel chaired by Dr. Emre Çetin Gürer, which is called Accesses of the University. It brings 4 academics and activists from Turkey and India together for a timely and engaging conversation. So we will meet at 4, and we will have the photos to show you as a video right now. Again, welcome and enjoy the conference. Çetin, you have to unmute yourself, I think, to have the sound.
Bir ocak gecesinde birden rektör atandı. Boğaziçi kültürü nasıl hiçe sayıldı? Boğaziçi kültürü nasıl hiçe sayıldı? Boğaziçi, Boğaziçi, Boğaziçi özgürdür. Atanmış bir rektörü kabul etmeyeceğiz. Seçim yapılana kadar biz vazgeçmeyeceğiz. Atanmış bir rektörü kabul etmeyeceğiz. Seçim yapılana kadar biz vazgeçmeyeceğiz. Akademik özerklik ihtiyaçtır diyoruz. Demokrasiden yana mücadele ediyoruz. Demokrasiden yana mücadele ediyoruz. Boğaziçi, Boğaziçi, Boğaziçi özgürdür. Atanmış bir rektörü kabul etmeyeceğiz. Seçim yapılana kadar biz vazgeçmeyeceğiz. Atanmış bir rektörü kabul etmeyeceğiz. Seçim yapılana kadar biz vazgeçmeyeceğiz. Öğrenci ve hocalar, mezunlar da burada. Birlikte direniyoruz Boğaziçi ruhuyla. Birlikte direniyoruz Boğaziçi ruhuyla. Boğaziçi, Boğaziçi, Boğaziçi özgürdür. Atanmış bir rektörü kabul etmeyeceğiz. Seçim yapılana kadar biz vazgeçmeyeceğiz. Atanmış bir rektörü kabul etmeyeceğiz. Seçim yapılana kadar biz vazgeçmeyeceğiz. Atanmış bir rektörü kabul etmeyeceğiz. Seçim yapılana kadar biz vazgeçmeyeceğiz.
Kabul etmiyoruz, vazgeçmiyoruz.
Fakülteleri ve tüm kararları özerkliğe karşıdır. Yandaşları, tehditleri ve söylemleri hakikate karşıdır. Baskınları, barikatları ve ablukaları özgürlüğe karşıdır. Bunların hiçbiri kayyumu kurtaramayacak. Bunların hiçbiri onları kurtaramayacak. Durduramayacaklar haklı öğrenci direnişini. Susturamayacaklar haklı öğrenci seslerini. Tohumları, kelepçeleri, biber gazları öğrenciye karşılığı. Gözaltıları, tutuklamaları, ev hapisleri özgürlüğe karşıdır. Bakanların söylemleri ve nefretleri hepsi aşka karşıdır. Bunların hiçbiri kayyumu kurtaramayacak. Bunların hiçbiri onları kurtaramayacak. Durduramayacak.
I'm sorry I had to cut the last song in the middle. I usually don't do that, but I hope more Ötesi will forgive me for doing this. It's about time, so maybe we can slowly start. A quick announcement that the pictures that you have seen, the slideshow that you have seen, is also to give you a sample of a sense of what's going to come on Friday. On Friday, there's going to be a forum in the campus, and the campus and the forum is going to have Can Candan's exhibition, the exhibition of his photos, faculty visual photos. And we will have lunch boxes as well. So if you're in Istanbul and if you're available, you'll be welcome to join us on Friday at 1 p.m. Now let me start our panel, the first panel. But before we begin, I would like to second Sonay's statements and thank everyone in Boğaziçi who is standing strong against the current oppression and keep this beacon of hope alive. I also want to express my gratitude to everyone who made this conference possible. Sonay listed their names, so I will not repeat, but she did not thank herself, so let me do it. Thank you, Sonay. Without your attention to details, your work ethics, your vision and joyful company, this conference would not have been possible. So thank you so much. Let me quickly make a few housekeeping announcements. Please make sure you write your full names on Zoom. And please choose the channel of your language if you are in need of translation. Please feel free to write your questions and comments on the chat box and at any point in the panel, and send it to the person named as send your questions here. At the end of all the presentations, I'll be posing as many of them as possible to the speakers. Due to time constraints, we won't be able to let participants use their microphones. Apologies for that. So on that note, let me start. The name of this first panel is Excesses of the University. This title was suggested initially by Biray Kuluoğlu in our first organization meeting. It immediately resonated with us because it encompasses the idea that university, particularly Boğaziçi, but also beyond, has so much value in it that exceeds the neoliberal agenda for higher education. And that excess is constantly marginalized, even expelled by authoritarian policies. Hence, we have 4 speakers today that will talk about this excess and the alternatives it creates that burgeon in Turkey and India. Our first speaker is Zeynep Kadirbeyoğlu. Let me introduce her before I give the mic to her. She received her master's in philosophy in University of Cambridge, Cambridge Social and Political Sciences, and her PhD in political science, McGill University. She's currently an associate professor in the Department of Political Science and International Relations at Boğaziçi University. Her research interests include democratization, decentralization, environmental civil society organizations, and citizenship. The title of her presentation is Crisis and Resistance at Boğaziçi University and Beyond. So without further ado, let me welcome Zeynep Kadirbeyoğlu.
Thank you very much, Çetin. Thank you all for coming, and thanks to the organizers for thinking about this event and making it possible. What I would like to do today is to give you a bit of overview of what's happening at Boğaziçi, but also thinking about university and higher education system in Turkey overall. And in reality, what I will be doing is to show you how the tools put together by old authoritarian regimes in Turkey, basically the institutional structure that they created, how it is being used by new authoritarianism, unfortunately. So I would like to share my screen for a while to show you also some visuals of what I'm talking about. And of course, there will be some details that the Turkish audience may be very familiar with, but I nevertheless wanted to show them because we do have an international audience with us. So what is happening at Boğaziçi University, which you will hear the details of in a moment, is not peculiar to Boğaziçi University. It happened in other universities in Turkey, more gradually maybe since mid-2000s. And but what I would like to highlight is what is maybe a bit different is that there's publicly visible resistance more or less as a bloc. So 95% of current faculty members did not give a vote of confidence to the current rector of the university. And what I would also like to highlight is that we're not just resisting the current administration, but actively rethinking the university from within, as Gambetti and Gökalpsel state in their intro to South Atlantic Quarterly Journal Against the Day special section on Boğaziçi University. I will share the link of that special issue or special section in a minute when I finish in the chat. And what I also would like to highlight is that this collective stubbornness and solidarity we experience is fascinating, and it has taught us a lot about each other, about the university, about what kind of university we would like to have once this roller coaster is over. And I also should highlight that this is not easy to maintain, but we are hanging in there, and hopefully we are still hopeful. We'll see how things will play out. So before I start, I would like to give you a very small detail about Boğaziçi University. It's actually a public university. You see the main campus on this picture in Istanbul. It gets the best students from various socioeconomic backgrounds, and it is free of charge. So it's a free education, high quality free education. It's also a research university that used to rank in the top 500 universities in the world. We have a very diverse student body, and we all liked being here. It's our academic home, and we really cherish this institution, and that's why we are resisting as a whole, basically. So here you see in the picture handcuffs closing the gates of the main gate of the university in January 2021, in order to keep the crowd who came to support Boğaziçi University students' protest. And the only way they could close the gate was using handcuffs. And the question that I would like to ask is, why would a state apparatus use, or criminalize the students and also professors? As you can see in this picture on the left, you see newspaper clippings where university professors were claimed by the sort of government-friendly media, claimed to be terrorists. And also I should highlight that the definition of terrorist is quite broad in Turkey. Unfortunately, anyone who opposes the government could be labeled as a terrorist. And on the right-hand side, you see students protesting or supporting their friends who are being tried in criminal court. And they were also rounded up and detained after this, unfortunately. So what we can say is that democratic and peaceful protest is criminalized, unfortunately, and tried in criminal courts. And needless to say, there's not much of judicial independence, unfortunately, in this day in Turkey. Now, I would like to take you to give you an overview of a bit of history. These are pictures from the 1980 military coup. So Turkey had ups and downs in its democratization process since 1923. There were numerous military coups, last one of which was the 1980 coup. Now, the military regime drafted a constitution in 1982, and the aim of the constitution was to maintain the influence of the military in politics even after shift to civilian government and throughout democratization, basically. One of the institutions that was founded by the military regime was the higher education institution and the higher education law. The aim of this law was basically to control the universities and the student body. For instance, it has a very restrictive disciplinary code. And of course, we know that power holders, governments do not like, or they're afraid of ideas that may challenge the status quo. So in that sense, it's not surprising to see this kind of move from a military regime. But what we should say is that even though university autonomy is written in the constitution, in practice, the executive, meaning the president in this day and age, has the power to appoint the university rector. Rector is very powerful, can single-handedly govern the university if he wants, mostly he, but there are women as well. This was not always the case. It began, I mean, this round began with the coup in 1980. But the universities were not as tightly controlled by political power in the post-1990 period when democratization was ongoing. However, since 2010, there is a serious decline in whatever minimal university autonomy there was in universities in Turkey. And I would like to show you this map, which is map based on VDEM data on academic freedoms. And you can see Turkey listed among the bottom, like the lowest academic freedom countries in the world. And more importantly, you will see in this timeline that the current level of academic freedom is as low as it was during the military regime in 1980, even though we are living in a civilian government. So a bit more history post 2010, because these are critical turning points. So the 2013 Gezi Park protests actually happened started as a protest against the decision of the government to build a shopping mall in the park in the city center, turned into diverse groups that were dissatisfied with the government policies, and the government reframed it as a coup attempt against the government of the day. What we see in the following years, in 2015, we had two general elections. In between the two general elections, there was a lot of political violence, and there was a declaration by a group of academics called Academics for Peace, denouncing the human rights abuses of the Kurdish people in the southeast of Turkey. However, this declaration and petition, which was signed by 1,000 or so academics, was repressed harshly by the government, and academics were punished. And these punishments were made easier by the coup in July 2016, or a coup attempt, failed coup attempt, which gave the government the opportunity to declare emergency rule and used the emergency powers to purge academics from universities. Among those were 406 academics for peace who lost their jobs and lost their passports. Basically, they were also tried. We were tried in criminal courts in Turkey. Despite being acquitted, these people who were purged from universities could not get their jobs back. And the final blow comes with the 2017 referendum, which transforms Turkey from a parliamentary system to a presidential system where the president single-handedly, more or less, rules over the country. Now, having said this, having given this background, I would like to now go back to Boğaziçi University. So it's initially is an American college established in 1860s. And in 1971, it became a public university and acquired the name Boğaziçi University. And it is the 9th oldest university in Turkey. Now we have more than 200 universities in Turkey, so you can see how there's an expansion in the numbers. At Boğaziçi University, the 1980 coup had appointed a rector from outside the university, but through the organization of the faculty members from different disciplines coming together and organizing an unofficial election for a rector's position in 1992, things started to change. So these professors also went to Ankara and lobbied the government and different institutions and tried to reform the higher education system such that the rectors would be elected. And this does change the law. And from 1992 to 2016, we have the rector's position, which is elected by the professors of the university. Now, Boğaziçi University had a bottom-up and democratic governance structures established over the years, gradually by the faculty members, by the issues that came up. So basically, once the university was able to function in a bottom-up manner, and the rector's position, even though the rector has significant powers given it to the person by the law, actually the rectors were mostly coordinators and basically leading or coordinating the different departments in the university. When we look at the governance structure, the university was actually governed by 34 Senate committees and 47 university executive board committees that are established on diverse topics, and they get together, make decisions, and basically try to influence the way the university is governed. So how it was governed was that whenever there was a problem, we got together, we took initiative to create different mechanisms to solve the problem. That's how it worked. And that's actually what is valuable for us. In addition to the very high quality students that we have, it's this democratic sort of decentralized governance structure that we valued at Boğaziçi University and wanted to maintain. And in 2012, University Senate approved a set of principles that should govern a public university. This was prepared bottom up in a very deliberative system, through a deliberative system, participatory system. And this step was taken knowing that the university may be in the future attacked, and we wanted to preserve basically this democratic decentralized structure. Unfortunately, in 2016, the rector we had elected with 86% of the votes, Güler was not appointed. And a couple months later, there was a presidential decree, emergency decree, actually, that eliminated the rector elections. And we had a rector who was appointed who had not been elected. He was from our university, and he did maintain the structure of the university, even though, given the political nature of the country, most of the student activities were affected. There was shrinking space for all sorts of democratic practices among the students, but it had not touched the academic realm, the faculty members. However, even though he was a candidate again in 2021, he was not appointed, and we had an appointment from outside. Melih Bulu was appointed with a midnight decree in January 2021. And what we did immediately was to prepare a declaration saying that we don't accept, we don't give up. We would like to maintain university autonomy. We would like to maintain a university that values diversity, that welcomes anyone who merits to be there. And since then, we have been holding vigils every working day. Since January 2021, we turn our backs to the rectorate's office at noon, and it's not an orchestrated event. We basically just show up there spontaneously. There's no list, nothing, but it has all, we haven't had a day when we missed this vigil, basically. It happens on a rotation basis. We hold Zoom forums every Sunday, and approximately 100 professors would show up and deliberate. We formed different committees to basically inform ourselves and take action against what is going on at the university. And I will tell you what is going on in a minute. We also filed lawsuits against all sorts of top-down breach of university autonomy. For example, there can be top-down appointment of government-affiliated academics to the university, or some admin positions which are filled unlawfully. Or we also filed lawsuits against the removal of our elected deans. And this was done in order to pack the university executive board and senate, which actually was our main resistance point up until January 2022. So for a year, we were able to slow down what they were trying to do at the university through our Senate representatives and our deans, but unfortunately, unlawfully, they were removed from their positions, claiming that they were not doing their jobs. We also try to maintain visibility in media, and there are also student protests. This is the forum from January 2021. They also engage in creative resistance tactics. The alumni in Turkey and abroad are also very supportive because they see this as an invasion of their academic home, of this institution that transformed them, us. I'm also an undergrad from Boğaziçi University. And I can say it was, I mean, being there, not just the classes, but the whole experience of the student clubs, of different experiences is what actually formed us and prepared us to become individuals who cherish sort of, deliberation, democratic participation, and acceptance of difference, and welcoming different ideas. The labor union is also active, but our admin personnel is quite scared because they are quite precarious. There is also a network of inter-university sort of associations getting together, but other university members of other universities are also quite scared. There's also international support, petitions, letters. And most importantly, we have a committee that works on university governance structures that has prepared a report, sent it out to all the universities in Turkey. And in a couple of weeks, we will be organizing a workshop to basically deliberate on what kind of higher education structure system we would like once this is over, once we can actually have a say in decisions that affect our lives, meaning basically once we have a democratization again. Okay, so what I would like to do in the last part of my talk, I will stop sharing now, is to tell you about what happened since January 2021 in terms of things that we were against and we knew would be coming, unfortunately. So there were a couple of professors' contracts who were terminated by the university administration unlawfully. Professors were parachuted into departments without the department's involvement or say. Student clubs were shut down. The LGBTI+ study club was shut down, and student activities were banned, censored, claiming that they were political activities, like an exhibition, like a photography exhibition or a movie show. That all of these things were banned by the student dean, claiming that they were political. Office for Prevention of Sexual Violence was shut down, claiming that the coordinator was a radical feminist. Students unfortunately face countless disciplinary investigations. This is done in order to terrorize the students, but also to terrorize the professors who are engaged in countless investigations. Faculty members also face disciplinary investigations for stuff like insulting your superiors. This is how they see the university, as a kind of military barrack. We have our superiors that we cannot have freedom of speech to criticize them, because then it would mean we are going to face charges, right? As I said, the Senate and the Executive Board was critical in slowing down these attacks, but the removals of the elected deans was a major blow to the university. And deans were parachuted from other universities into the university, and now they are chairing the schools. The rector complained about 16 professors to the prosecutor's office for just basically protesting. Many students were detained and tortured by the police, and the university is surrounded by riot police, and secret police is on campus. And unfortunately, these have all been very hard on the students who are, many of them are hopeless about the future. They have not seen anything else because the current government has been in power for the past 20 years. So they've actually grown up with this current government, and they just want to go abroad. One of my students came to me and said, how can you put up with this? And I was like, what do you mean? And she said, you know, all this that's going on. And and she said, why are you still here? Why haven't you left? And I said, well, I mean, we're not leaving because we would like to maintain what we think is a good university, and we would like to maintain our relationship of basically, you know, learning and teaching together in this university and researching. And yes, I mean, practically speaking, we could leave, but then, you know, what happens to the ones who cannot leave? And so we don't want to lose hope. We are hopeful. There will be elections in the coming year, not sure when, but we are preparing for what's going to come after the elections. Hopefully, there will be opportunity to restructure the higher education system, not going back to the old structure, because as I said, the old structure was actually done, like constructed under a military regime, but really thinking about what kind of higher education system we could establish that would allow for the kinds of freedoms that we cherish, that could maintain university autonomy, that can maintain academic freedom, make sure that we do have academic freedoms, and space for our students to learn, to basically get transformed and become individuals who could work for the public good. So thank you. And I'm really eager to listen to the next speakers. Thank you.
All right, let me jump in, and then next speaker is going to be Yücel Demirer. Let me introduce him and just make a quick reminder. We will take the questions at the very end of all the presentations, so please feel free to write your questions and comments on the chat box and send it to the person who is named. Send your questions here, and let me reveal who is behind that banner. It's Sonay, actually, so she's working behind that banner. So please send it on the chat box if you have any questions or comments. Yücel Demirer is going to be our next speaker. As I said, let me introduce him before giving the mic to him. He received his PhD from Ohio State University. He's one of the signatories of Academics for Peace Declaration titled "We Will Not Be Party to This Crime," and dismissed from his academic position at Kocaeli University, Political Science and Public Administration Department on September 1st, 2016. He is also charged with terrorist organization propaganda for signing the same declaration. His research centers on the intersection of culture and politics. He has published articles and books on Kurdish symbolic expressions along with the political aspects of religion. He's particularly interested in understanding how the alternative venues of politics, such as performances, symbols, and festivals, affect politics as a whole and the political decision-making processes at various levels. He also writes a weekly column for the Evrensel newspaper. The title of his presentation today is "The University in Ruins, Views on Current Trends in Neoliberal Authoritarian Higher Education in Turkey." So thank you so much for accepting our invitation, Yücel Demirer. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Çetin. Good morning and good afternoon to the friends in different continents. It's a great pleasure being here. First of all, I would like to thank to the organizers of this meeting for the invitation. It's a great pleasure. I'm here to talk about the current trends in the Turkish higher education system as a dismissed academic, as a former practitioner of the Turkish higher education.
Can you speak a little bit louder?
Sure.
Sorry for interruption.
I divided my talk into three parts. Simply, in the beginning, I'll tell you about my personal journey in the Turkish university system. Next, I'll share a couple of concrete examples from the contemporary Turkish university scene, considering the comprehensive titles of the neighboring talks and believing that they are in good hands. I prefer to focus micro-level cases, the cases that cannot make the national news in Turkey. And finally, I want to discuss the future of university in Turkey. When I was asked to come up with a topic for this talk, I checked my personal archive and came up with a booklet that I co-authored in the year 2000, titled Ateş Altında Üniversite, University Under Fire. In this short book, we, a group of 3, discuss the neoliberal tendencies shaping the university system in Turkey and the destruction caused by YÖK, the Higher Education Council. In a period when there was neither Justice and Development Party nor Tayyip Erdogan, the president, in the political scene, we highlighted the market-oriented tendencies along with unfailing oppression in the academic environment. Telling the truth, when I look into the text today and considering the last 20 years that we experienced here in Turkey, it seems that we were too quick to be that pessimistic. The booklet that I co-authored, among many other studies, was influenced by Bill Redding's book, The University in Ruins, as some of you might know. It was published in 1996 after his tragic death in a plane crash in 1994. The book was published after his death and became one of the main sources for the condition of university under neoliberal attacks. Based upon an eloquent revisit of the university, he argued that the research university, which based upon 200 years old German idealist tradition, had faded and started to be run by the overlords of the corporate world. Focusing the shallow and excessive use of excellence for defining success of the university context, he shed light to the techno-bureaucratic mechanisms of erosion in the universities. He simply claimed that University of Excellence was an institution in ruins, an institution driven by market sources, where profit, this part is very important, where profit margins were important than thought. As part of his effort as an academic to reclaim the right to define the university, Reddings proposed the replacement of excellence with 2 concepts, thought and dissensus. While defining the goal and priorities of education with thought, he defined the method with dissensus. Although his preference of thought over critical thinking required some further discussions, I have no time for that today, and I'll be returning to Redding's idea of the University of Dissent at the end of my talk. As Çetin mentioned, I'm a dismissed academic. In January 2006, more than 2,000 scholars from Turkey and around the world, including myself, signed a petition titled "We Will Not Party to This Crime." Thanks to Zeynep, she just summarized this eloquently. The peace petition signed by academics to end the civil deaths in the southeastern part of the country drew a severe reaction from President Erdogan because it deemed the state responsible to restart the peace process in the country. The president criticized the peace academics violently after the peace petition, which became public on January 11, 2016. On a public statement following the petition, Erdogan said, quote, "These academics are tyrants, despicables, because those who are with tyrants are also tyrants themselves. I called all judicial authorities at university administration for duty to punish these acts against our constitutional laws," end quote. Since then, the signatories have been subject to heavy pressure and persecution. Hundreds of them have faced criminal and disciplinary investigations, custody, imprisonment, or violent threats. I was among the academics who were briefly detained. The Turkish government declared the state of emergency in the aftermath of July 15 coup attempt, as Zeynep mentioned. The cabinet passed several successive decrees since then and dismissed more than 100,000 public servants, claiming that they were affiliated with or connected to terrorist organizations. Although there is no association at all, the list included faculty members of public universities who signed the peace petition. Kocaeli University, where I used to work, was among the largest number of peace petitioners within the provincial universities, and the first to dismiss all 19 of the peace academics at once in the first day of September 2016. The academics who were dismissed from Kocaeli University left the university with a motto: "We will return. We are not leaving our students and the city," right after their dismissal. This declaration paved the way, the foundation of Kocaeli Academy for Solidarity. 1 year later, we created an alternative school called the School of Life in Izmit. Actually, Zeynep Hoca was, she came and gave us a wonderful lecture there. This school was planned to be free and open to all. One of the main aims of the program was to break down the hierarchical structure of the established academy and the problematic character of the teacher-student relations. During this 2-year period, our building was watched secretly by the police. Our school was investigated by a commission consisting of various local governmental agencies. Parallel to these, Turkey has become an open-air prison and territory of unlawful practices. Those purged by government decree are not only removed from their academic positions and barred from other academic employment. At the same period of time, the assault on academics in Turkey took a new disturbing twist when the National Academic Network and Information Center, ULAKBİM, an arm of government agency, the Scientific and Technological Research Council of Turkey, TÜBİTAK, that oversees scholarly publication in Turkey, sent to the journals in its database memorandum, asking them to report any editors and referees that have been purged recently due to their alleged affiliation with terrorist organizations. ULAKBİM asked the journals its overseas to take the necessary precautions to keep purged academics from editorial and refereeing positions. The young colleagues, the ones with no academic degrees and settled lives, the ones with children, were hit the worst. Marriages ended, lives changed drastically. Experiencing a deep social and professional isolation, being a person who was labeled as traitor by the president of the country, they were not able to work in the university setting since their dismissal. Being in a dire need for an economic, social, and professional environment, which provides them minimum conditions of normality and productivity, hundreds of peace academics left the country. In the title of my talk, I promised to share my views on current trends in higher education in Turkey. I also mentioned that I'll be dealing with the examples that I haven't been in the news. Keeping my promise, I need to give you 6 brief cases to give you an idea, a taste of the current situation in Turkey. They are going to be extremely brief, and I have to, because of the current circumstances, I'm not in a position to provide more details. Please allow me. Here are some snapshots, just giving you an idea. Case 1, a young political scientist with an MA from a prestigious Turkish university applies to a position in a newly created university in the northwest Turkey. Besides his good publication record, his ALES, Turkish version of GRE, and foreign language scores were above the other candidates, he successfully passes both written and oral examinations. However, 2 weeks later, the university administration informs him that the position is cancelled. 6 months later, a candidate who failed in the first round is hired for the position. The young scholar goes abroad and returns to Turkey with a PhD from a prestigious program. He wishes to be academically functional in Turkey and tries to survive as a part-timer in a small private university. It doesn't work again, and finally he ends up in a postdoc position somewhere in Europe. Case 2. A group of scholars, including purged academics and the ones still working in the university system, starts a conference series to promote a blooming academic topic. At first, these meetings are ignored and not participated by the people who are part of the academic hegemony. After seeing the success of the efforts and the popularity of the topic, YÖK, Higher Education Council of Turkey, creates 2 doctoral scholarships per year to send young academics abroad to create departments in the university system within the subject. The jury who selects students for the scholarship doesn't include one single expert in that area. Parallel to this, a doctoral program is created in a provincial city in central Anatolia. The department immediately starts to offer PhD degrees without one single expert, again, in the subject, on the subject. Case 3 is a success story. This is this person is now a full professor in a provincial university. His unique academic skills, academic career starts in one of the administrative departments in the same university. This easygoing local boy, this minor office worker, climbs academic ladders quickly. His reputation for running errands for higher-ups in the department helps his advancement in the university. He takes TOEFL exam in a remote country with bad reputation for academic fraud. His teaching is famous with its comedy dimensions. Perfunctory publications, no expertise, but lots of consulting and consulting income. Now he's a full professor somewhere in Turkey. Case 4, this person is a young ethnic studies expert. He becomes a well-known figure before his 30s. His MA thesis, I know him very well, becomes a very successful book. I want to repeat it, his MA thesis in his area of expertise. After his dismissal from university, when he's working for his doctoral dissertation, he starts to work part-time in the small textile business of his family. 2 years later, he has to make a dire decision, ends up working full-time to support his wife and his little baby, and doesn't complete his dissertation. Case 5, for the time being, she works for one of the big universities in Turkey, bold, funny, highly popular among students, loves to teach. Her office used to be full of students and academic energy. Now she rarely spends time in her office. She tells her friends that she lost her appetite for almost everything. She says that this is not because she's afraid of losing her academic position, but because of losing her faith in the idea of university, she stopped writing. Case 6, this is the last one. He was a very successful professor with a very, very long list of publications, but very, very, very long list that I'm talking about in prestigious journals. He used to work in one of the best universities in Turkey in a technical research-oriented department. Because of his political opinions, his research environment that he built is destroyed. After trying hard to survive, he moves abroad and now has a prestigious position. These brief accounts of academic life stories reveals that the defects of the Turkish university, perhaps in more complex ways. The university that we see in these stories entirely unconcerned with the foundations of critical thinking and its contents. These examples, among many other things, suggest the decline of long-standing relations between individual and society, university and state, education and civil rights. I believe these cases, which can easily be proliferated, successfully displays that today university is in ruins in Turkey. So, if the university as an institution is in ruins in Turkey, what needs to be done? In a conference titled The Future of University, What Can I Tell You About the Future in Turkey? I need to make it clear that even though I delightedly borrow his concept of university and ruins to define the current situation in Turkey, I do depart from Bill Redding's University of Dissent recipe for the solution of this deep-seated problem for our context. When I look into the large picture of university scene in my country, other than very limited exceptions, I see an archaic institution with no foundational principle which is not able to face the reality. Historically, economic conditions, social changes, and technological developments have affected universities in Turkey immensely. Just like the other examples in all over the world, the commodification of the knowledge production and exchange practices, this institution was forced to reconstruct itself following the demands of capitalism. This was dreadful enough. However, as Zeynep mentioned eloquently, after the long-standing and highly effective destruction of Erdogan regime's authoritarian populism, which has been openly against critical thinking and academic freedom, I believe it's time to start talking about the death of university in Turkey. While suggesting this, I do not want to repeat one of the widely paraded discourses to make a strong statement. That's not what I'm trying to do. Considering the endless horror stories coming from the universities one after another, I believe it's time to face the reality of the death of university and take the first steps for a new beginning. In a country without respect of the rule of law, defense of university requires strong commitment for the cause. Before start discussing about core values of academic freedom, university autonomy, independent accreditation bodies, self-governing professional associations, etc., a new beginning needs to start with redefining the role and responsibility of the intellectual in Turkey in this difficult era. I hope I did not sound too pessimistic. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Yücel, for your presentation. I'm sure it's going to steer a lot of discussion and many questions people will ask. But before the Q&A, let me introduce the third speaker, Ulaş Bayraktar, is going to present. He was an associate professor of political science until he was expelled also from university with hundreds of colleagues for being among the petitioners of the same call for peace. He has then founded a cafe library, Kültürhane, with other expelled scholars in Mersin, Turkey. Since then, they organize talks, meetings, and social events to sustain their relationship with the public and continue to read, reflect, and write, and publish for the public good. The title of his presentation is Kültürhane as an aesthetic political space of knowledge production and dissemination. Thank you, Ulaş Bayraktar, for joining us, and please feel free to share your screen, and the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for the invitation. I will start English, but I will continue in Turkish because I was afraid I would be too embarrassed to speak in English in front of such a honorable audience. So I'm sorry for the non-Turkish speakers, and I thank from the beginning to the translators for the hard work waiting for them. Evet, çok teşekkür ederim davetiniz için. Gerçekten burada
Thank you very much for your kind invitation. It's a great honor for me to be here before such distinguished scholars.
Ben sevgili Çetin'in söylediği gibi barış imzacılarından biriydim ve
As Çetin has mentioned, I was one of the petitioners calling for peace, and I had to change my career. I was indeed purged from the public sector, but then switched into another sector. And I will try to give you a glimpse of my journey. I have also prepared a PowerPoint presentation, so let me share it with you. Çetin has already shared the title of my speech. Kültürhane is an aesthetic political space of knowledge production and dissemination. This is how I define Kültürhane as a space. I don't know how it is translated. We're talking here about a political space, but it is not only it's not only a physical space. It is some sort of a sphere or venue. Zeynep has already provided us with the context. Professor Yücel Demirer also gave us the life stories, the cases. Age quod agis is the motto that we have adopted at the beginning of this journey. It has been already 5 years since we founded Kültürhane, and we are still open, surprisingly. So I'll tell you more about Kültürhane, but before doing so, as a small business owner, in inverted commas, I will also tell you some background. Because all the things that we have experienced and continue to experience as universities is not only unique to universities. Just as Antonio Gramsci said, the times are changing, the paradigms are shifting, and some things are dying. And since the new cannot be born, we do not have much idea about what is awaiting us. So we are finding it very difficult to cope with this and to devise strategies accordingly. And we are trying to experiment. Zeynep has talked about hope. And another academic that was purged wrote a storybook, and she says, we don't need hope to be able to do things in life. It's just the other way around. We have to do something in order to arrive in this hope. And this is what we try to achieve in Kültürhane. So we are living in an era where the old is dying and the new cannot be born. So what kind of strategy we can devise in such an era? And my response to this question is to come up with the right diagnosis first. Let me refer to Bernard Stiegler. We are witnessing an overall process of having proletariatism. So proletariats are not only workers, we are talking about the entire apparatus, the experts, services, all sorts of networks, objects, and the technological dispositions. So everyone who are related are influenced by that, and universities are not free from this either. So we are living in this age where we see disintegration and decay, and universities are also influenced by that. So when we look into our relation with this process of having everything becoming like proletariats, our experiences are also intimidating those in power. And this brings along alienation to information, alienation to our students, because we are acting in haste to give our students their diplomas. We just want to act in haste in order to solve problems or fix problems immediately. And beyond the instructor-student relationship, universities have being transformed into a technology, and a student-instructor relationship has turned into an apparatus of this technology. This is my feeling. So this technology imposes certain things on us. And it goes beyond the university itself. We can talk about the technology of politics. So the technology of politics transforms all of us. For instance, our appointed trustee rector last week delivered a speech at the campus at the university right before the president, and you can find different items of technology or politics from his speech. So we need a brand new venue, a brand new instrument for us to have a better understanding of future universities. And for that, I believe we need to reach out to information. And when I talk about information, we should not only have information as data. Information should also include emotions and all sorts of other things. So we need new institutions. We need aesthetics, but not aesthetics as something beautiful, but aesthetics as opposed to anesthesia. So we need information that would not only appeal to reason, to mind, but also to our sensations. Here comes a definition from Eagleton. So this relationship between students and instructors perhaps can be created based on our emotions. Let me go back to Gramsci. So, Güneş Oya Aydemir, Güneşin Oya Aydemir defines this as the era of compost. So the disintegration, decomposition, ultimate decay can be likened to this process where we are going through. If we do not think of necessary interventions in this process, then we will end up in decay. And there are three ways of doing this in intervention. We need to build a network, we need to ensure circularity, and we need to also let out the energy. We need to transmit that energy constantly. So if we can take this metaphor of the era of compost, can we adapt it to reproduction and dissemination of knowledge? So I will give it a try. I have already mentioned you three intervention methods mentioned by Güneş'in. The first one is diversity or building of a web or network, so that it brings along the element of hybridism. And we will then place it in the context of circularity, which will then ensure our interaction with the outside world. So I will now try to tell you how Kültürhane responds to all of these theories. I define Kültürhane as a hybrid space. First of all, it has different functions. It is a library in the first place. At that time, the president or rector of Mersin University, he was even more proactive than the state of emergency decrees. Even before the failed coup attempt, he has already at that time dismissed academics. That's the reason why we came up with the idea to work with these academics and start a library together. This was our starting point. And thanks to contribution of our colleagues here, we managed to compile books and periodicals, and we have ended up with such an extensive library in multiple languages, including French and Arabic. We have our literature focused on social sciences. Perhaps this is not a library where academics often resort to. However, I have to say that students are coming to our library very often. And in terms of its financial viability, we needed to start a cafe. We needed to open a cafe to serve food and beverages. And in that way, we can finance the library itself. But beyond being a library and a cafe, we have a stage. So at this very stage, we are able to host prominent scholars, we organize workshops, we organize concerts, we do film screenings, we carry out numerous activities. We give the floor to anyone and everyone. This is an open space for everyone. And of course, in order to save public resources so that people don't have to physically come to our venue, we also do online broadcasting via YouTube. So we have the necessary infrastructure for sound, for lighting, and for live broadcast, which means we now have a studio, in-house studio. So you can follow our activities not only by physically visiting us in Mersin, but anyone can reach out to our activities online. And during the pandemic, we have experimented with hybrid events. So on the one hand, we organized online meeting with remote participation, but we have also continued our one-to-one, face-to-face activities. So we have been experimenting both hybrid and online events. We have also started publishing a journal which includes the menu of the cafe, but also it is a magazine with some news from the urban culture. So the diversity of Kültürhane, with its library, digital infrastructure, its publications, now spans over multiple areas. Let me tell you more about our activities. We have started organizing winter school with the participation of our distinguished professors. But later on, we felt the need to take a step forward, not to limit it to student-instructor relationship. We invited our scholars with their individual experience, based on their individual experience and not with their scholar hat. For instance, you can see Can Can'dan, we have exhibitions, we have sculpture exhibitions. So we also pay attention to carry out events related to culture and arts. We can organize events on gender equality, urban history, urban memory. Mersin is a very important province for us because the city needs to meet with all its components and constituents for a knowledge production to happen. We have some certain city tour maps. We work together with the local authorities while doing so. And we also have a world map of solidarity for hope, which you can see at the very bottom. So we also work in solidarity with other countries. And we are now working together with CDPR, based in UK, to mark the centenary of the Republic. 100 years, 100 objects is the title. So we will try to depict the history through 100 objects.
So this is important in terms of diversity as well. And the second dimension, maybe you would remember this. I talked about circularity before, and here's what I mean by that. Especially as a cafe, we try to rub shoulders with other democratic organizations and producers, such as we have a couple of suppliers such as co-ops and Ovacık Solinova. So we purchase goods, coffee and tea from these cooperatives in order to exhibit solidarity with them and in order to achieve this level of circularity. And because of the pandemic, we took some extra steps and we started delivering meals in these tubs that you see on the left of the screen. But we cooked meals and we made sure that and also the waste would be put in the compost as well. And we would deliver these meals in these tubs that can be reused. So this was a great way me to go back to the university as well, because we had orders from the university and I delivered those orders. So I was back, and hopefully of course I wasn't back as a professor, but as a delivery guy I was back. So anyway, so this is another dimension of that circularity. So we really reached out to other like-minded institutions and suppliers when we do business. And finally, when we talk about transfer of energy, we should underscore the fact that it's not just us who is doing this all, or who is behind the scenes. And obviously we try to, like I said, network as well. To the left, you see this logo of Cheetah, and they were established within Kültürhane, within our institution, and Zeynep was there as well, and she made a great presentation. And she told us about the Boğaziçi cooperative, and then there was this food initiative that took hold here in Mersin, and then a cooperative ensued, and we had a festival back in 2019, the art of sharing and the craft of sharing, it was entitled, and we turned the marketplace into a festival area, and we had a school on how to run a cooperative, and after that school, a women's cooperative was established called Solinova. Ayşegül Yılgör, one of our founders, is now the chair of this cooperative. So we are reaching out and expanding. And as we do that, actually, it's not just us, it's not just our resources. We try to make sure that many other people can be a part of this, can support our endeavors. And to the right, you see Mehmet Fatih library. Unfortunately, he died by suicide after being expelled from his university. So we have a book club and a library dedicated under his name, and other people can actually support those in need financially and intellectually as well. So many of our friends were able to support students thanks to this initiative. Ahmet Yeşil, a painter, donated some of his work, and these were auctioned off. And again, we generated some income. And on Patreon, we have an account as well, so people can actually support us on Patreon. So it's not just our patrons who actually frequent our establishment, but others who live in other cities can support us, albeit in a limited capacity. So it goes both ways. We support them and they support us. And for the last 5 years, this is what we've been doing. And all this circularity, concept of circularity and interaction and sharing, all these concepts are really dear to our hearts. And the same thing applies to universities as well. And there's an emotional bond. There needs to be an emotional bond in universities as well. And this is what we're going to advocate for as long as we can. Up until now, this is what we've done, and we've done well. And finally, let me say one more thing. Tanıl Bora has this article entitled "Despite Everything," and I love this. What we have done has been not born out of stubbornness and animosity, but has been born out of sort of healing and aesthetics. And we've always said this since we were expelled. We said we would survive, and we have survived thus far. And I thank you all for your attention. Thank you very much.
Teşekkürler Ulaş Bayraktar. Yine sorularınızı I'm sorry, I switched to Turkish as well because I was listening in Turkish. I'll be speaking in English. So please do write your questions and comments on the chat box. We will read them at the very end. The next speaker is Savita Singh. Let me introduce her. She's one of the board of directors in Marcuse Society. She's a political theorist and a feminist poet, teaching in the School of Gender and Development Studies, Indira Gandhi National Open University, Delhi. She writes both in Hindi and English. She has several collections of poetry published, translated in many languages of the world. She's the recipient of prestigious awards for poetry including Raza Award, Hindi Academy Award, Eniste Souza Award. Her latest book in political philosophy is titled Reality and Its Depths, a conversation between Savita Singh and Roy Bashar, published by Springer in 2020. The title of her presentation today is Revisiting Rabindra Nath Tagore's vision of Vishwa Bharti University. I'm so sorry if I butchered the pronunciation of this, Savita. It's a great pleasure to have you here, Savita Singh, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Çetin. Let me express my deep gratitude to you and Sonia and others who have spoken. I've been listening very, very carefully. And to, of course, Herbert Marcuse International Society. While I was listening to all of you, I restructured my presentation. The thing is that there's a context, because my topic is revisiting Vishwa Bharti University, which was the first international university in the country. It was established in 1921 by Rabindra Tagore, and it was established on the foundation of a school born out of great faith and experiment that was carried out by a poet like Rabindra Tagore, which is known as Shanti Niketan. So Shanti Niketan also operates on the same campus as the university. Vishwa Bharti, what does it mean? You must understand, because there are too many stakes here. The situation is not so dire in India at the moment, but I will not be surprised that we catch up with you all very fast. Because what is happening is a global outcome of a global restructuring or global ambition and development of capital, which has its birth in 15th, 16th century. You must understand how this global capital is operating now and why it is so strong, dismantling almost any human effort, any effort that is in the direction of freedom, in the direction of life, for everyone. The context is this today, that even in India, very good universities are under tremendous stress and strain. Jawaharlal Nehru University, for example, in 2 years back, very bad shape. Police used to invade the campus, beat up the students. It also happened in Jamia Millia Islamia, which is also in Delhi, another campus of students. Wherever there was any possibility for students and teachers to go against the present direction in which capitalism is developing in India, to dealt with the more or less same kind of harsh intention and I should say bad faith, frankly. The second point that I want to mention in terms of revisiting Vishwa Bharti University experience or experiment is the context of India's nationalist movement. There's a combination, lethal combination between the notion of nationalism and the ambition of world capital. It's creating that combination where most of us who are, secular, who are liberal, who are progressive, we are under kind of a situation of being defeated. The examples of number of students and their lives destroyed that was pointed out by our second speaker, it was just making me feel so desperate to reach out to those people. I mean, those lives have gone, isn't it? I mean, gone in the sense that they didn't have the careers that they wanted, and how ruthlessly these lives have been destroyed and dismembered. Not to say that it is not going to happen everywhere, I mean, in India particularly, but the hope that we have to have, the hope with which we must operate is theoretically possible. That is what I'm trying to argue. And that is why the second point in discussing revisiting Vishwa Bharati University is that the aesthetic education that has been visualized and emphasized by various scholars, Marcuse included, particularly is in this context that we're discussing, that the future in which we have to go, or the future that we attempt to create in our present, is this direction that we should make, we should take our steps towards aesthetic education, because it has tremendous possibilities of creating democratic societies, re-establishing democratic societies that are being destroyed at the moment. So this being the context in which I'm trying to today discuss with you all an experiment that was carried out by a poet, who was also a fantastic educationist, Rabindra Nath Tagore, the first Indian or Asian to have received Nobel Prize for his poetry, called Gitanjali. Now, it might sound audacious as to what he did, but he did it. And I'm not very sure that he would be able to do it now. So what I want to do, method of presentation, is I want to take you all through a flashback. Let us go to the recent past of this country of India, which aspires to become a world power, which aspires to become a leader in education world. There is no doubt that India has produced the best engineers and scientists, the people who have taken to modern education. But India was able to produce also great painters, filmmakers, fiction writers, with extraordinary depth and talent. You know, the Shanti Niketan, for example, started on this notion that we are all aesthetically viewed, we're all aesthetically provided with possibilities of becoming rounded people, noble people, people with all our senses ignited, all our senses cultivated. This world, for example, is a place, according to Rabindra Tagore, who took inspiration not from historical materials, by the way, but from the reinterpreted texts of Upanishads. Upanishads are interpreted texts in terms of their interpretations of Vedas. And then during the modern time, when India was colonized, they were pressed to, they were forced rather to look into the traditional texts again, to be able to live with a possibility of some semblance of dignity and equality. So these texts were again interpreted, and Rabindra Tagore took the best from them. And you know, in the discourse of Indian modernity, you'll find that Vedantic or Upanishadic interpretations played a great role. So let me just take you closer to that, so that you understand how Rabindra Tagore could do this, which will not be possible today, which I'm saying. The idea is that this universe has a rational kernel, that is to say, essence, which cannot obtain itself in the form of essences or unity. It can only realize itself through multiplicity. The diversity is a very important concept for people like Rabindra Tagore. This diversity is also the basis of aesthetic world, aesthetic life that he wanted to create. He created to a very large extent, as a result of which I'm telling you that we have painters like Bengal school, great painters like Nandlal Bose, or Nath, or I know very many, I just had noted down somewhere. So this institution believed that we live as human beings to realize ourselves in our multiplicity, in our diversity. So many languages, many cuisines, many kinds of people, many races. This was the basis on which Rabindranath Tagore imagined school. But when this school was established, Shantiniketan, Rabindranath Tagore's father, Rabindranath Tagore, established a small school based on Upanishadic principles, where there were only 5 students. Rabindranath Tagore was 17 at the time when he visited the school. Inspired by what his father was, he finally developed it into a school which will have no walls, it will have no building, it will have no boundaries. The teaching will take place in nature, because the real teacher is nature, not human beings. So this kind of openness, kind of alternative views that were against the nationalist project that was developing in the country. When I say nationalist project, I mean to say capitalism developing within India through. And very soon, because Rabindranath Tagore was deeply impressed with traditional understanding, how one becomes a person, how one lives a good life, that he could see that what was coming, what was the present form of colonialism, and what was coming to replace it, or rather to fight it, the nationalist project. He was suspicious that both of them are things, and a new condition of unfreedom is created. So later on, he wrote an article which talked about nationalism and nation as reified concepts that create illusion for us to, where actually the garb of this we lead free lives which are not free, lives which are full of servitude. So this kind of slow radical interpretations that he began to develop allowed historical conjuncture for him to imagine a school. Now, at that time, the colonial government didn't really much think of this experiment as something radical, so radical as to it'll challenge their project of development of capitalist country. But when Vishwa Bharti was established, when out of the criticism of narrowness of nationalist project, when he began to criticize nationalist leaders and established Vishwa Bharati on the principles of what he called internationalism. The motto of Vishwa Bharati is, in Sanskrit it's called Yat Vishwa Bhavatatma Vidam, meaning where the world makes a home in a single nest. That is to say, he didn't want distinctions of the sort on the basis of or on the nationalism. All people have the same spirit, same rational kernel. They are expressed in multiple ways, and these multiple ways should not be confused with the same narrowness that nationalism is championing. So he wanted to embrace the entire world, and Vishwa Bharati became an open university in that sense that anybody could come and study and live there with minimum structures available. He didn't want any infrastructure of a big infrastructure in the university. He didn't want any bureaucratic interference in the university. People were the curriculum that was created was mostly arts and literature, dances, and studying nature closely. Most Bengal school painters were natural painters. They were great painters. They painted lives of tribal people who were around. This school was in Bolpur. It's a village. It was a village. Now it's a kasbah, and now it's a town. And all kinds of other developments taken place. And this Vishwa Bharati is an experiment of a kind that only an idealist who is also practical could establish. It's like a complex system. But in 1951, this university was granted the status of a central university. And the Prime Minister becomes the Chancellor of the university. The President of India becomes the visitor of the university. The entire state structure against which he was fighting integrated the university. And the dream that he had of making this university truly universal, fight the ideology, reification of life brought by nation state and so on, was very nicely accommodated. That is why I want to talk to you all about this in flashback. And it will remain in the past, given the condition that we have today everywhere. It is different. You know, for me to come and talk about the present situation in the country is again just like most of you have expressed that. It's fraught with all kinds of risks, danger, and more higher the position that you are, vulnerable. School of Gender and Development Studies, I don't know whether I have time to talk to you. It was also an experiment, but slowly and gradually I realized that within the bureaucratic structure of the university in which the school is, it's only a matter of time when we will not be able to develop curriculum that we want to develop. I also realized that this entire discipline of gender and development studies basically is a state's project. It is a project of the gender project of the state, of the nation state. And feminism, breathing within this disciplinary boundary, will be taking a beating very soon. I have been invited to speak on some very sensitive issues, and I have avoided to speak because it only invites unnecessary and dangerous consequences. So about Vishwa Bharati, I wanted to tell you of that. Rabindra Tagore had a dream. He believed in utopia, but at the same time, he believed in concrete utopia, just like there is such closeness between him and Marcuse's ideas. Oh, so they are about, I don't know, 20, 30 years apart, right? Because he received Nobel Prize for Gitanjali in 1930s. Yes. For that, he was writing most of his novels. I can give you 3 names, very important novels that he wrote. Ghare Baire, on which Satyajit Ray made a film. I shared with you all a documentary on Tagore, so that you understand the nationalist project. Our nationalist project is basically an authoritarian project, which is only revealed itself now, and that kind of logic has become mature. And you know, in future, again, I would say, I want to say that our past is also our future. You know, this flashback, that story that I'm telling, precisely for this reason, because this has been experimented. People have lived that kind of aesthetic lives within Vishwa Bharati campus and in Shantini. They sing every day. They have been singing. I do not know now Rabindra Sangeet. In fact, I will close my talk today by first paragraph from Gitanjali, so that you understand what he was fighting for. He was not fighting for a nation. Unlike Gandhi, he was fighting for a culture, a civilization, which will be world civilization, not Indian civilization. I mean, it's a bit narcissistic in a way for me to say that in Upanishads, various Upanishads, this particular idea that the world, the entire world is a place for everyone, not exclusively for some. So any system that creates exclusively situation for some to lead better life and others to lead bad and terrible life of unfreedom and oppression is not something that can become vision of a university like Vishwa Bharati. I mean, I would say that the future of the university lies in what Vishwa Bharati stood. An aesthetic education, like Marcuse has been had been trying and writing about, just as Rabindra Tagore has been writing and has tried. That's the route. That's the way that we have to go. We have to fight for beauty, not only for equality. We have to fight for freedom, which is closer to beauty than equality. Equality can be achieved, you know. Marcuse, this sentence haunts me all the time as far as feminism is concerned. His article on feminism and Marxism, that women might, in advanced capitalist countries, women might acquire fair equality, but equality is not free. Equality is not yet freedom. Right. So the aesthetic education is to give us or provide us a way for us to realize our freedom. And freedom has a close relationship. Our wholeness is very, very important. We cannot lead just one-dimensional life. That was the reason why Rabindra Tagore kept fighting, even with, you know, he had developed differences, open differences, public differences with Gandhi. That nationalist boundaries, the narrowness of the policies of nationalist leaders, he said that this is going to lead to what we are seeing today. You know, he also criticized Aurobindo, who was one of the theorists of extremist strand of nationalism in India at that time when Bengal was bifurcated in 2005. Aurobindo was an important leader at the time. And so Rabindra Tagore said, look, nationalism has this potential of developing into extremism, violence, and fascism. So it's not a project that nationalism is not something, or a nation is not something that will offer you the expanded boundary within which you can realize yourself. Just a temporary structure benefiting some people more than the others. So I'll give you one quotation so that you understand what he's saying. He's saying that those people, talking about nationalists, those people who have got their political freedom are not necessarily free. They are merely powerful. The passions which are unbridled them are creating huge organizations of slavery in the disguise of freedom. The nation of the West forges its iron chains of organization, which are the most relentless and unbreakable that have ever been manufactured in the whole history. The nationalist project comes as a delayed project of colonialism within nations where colonialism took place. And it will flower, it will develop, and it has a potential to develop into authoritarian structure. The way for us then is to fight on, once Rabindranath had said that a transcendence is not unknown to universalism is not something to be imagined. It is all known in the concrete itself, the fragments, multiple structures of the universe have universality embedded. The simultaneous acknowledgement of how things ontologically exist can derive higher principles. So I would say that even from the authoritarian situation that we are in, possibilities of getting ourselves out of it. I greatly appreciated Ulas's presentation, that we have to make an effort to create possibilities for beauty to survive, to thrive, to breathe. I have myself, along with my friends, have organized and have been organizing conferences outside the university, knowing that our universities are part of national projects. they've become, because of how capitalism is developing, subsets of the economy state. Two types of, Arnold was talking about two kinds of education that are permanently given in the university. First one allows you to find jobs. Second one has to allow you to become a fully human being, And I think it is that is under attack. The bureaucratization of the world, of the nation states, of cultures that are taking place, they will need the vocational various kinds of skills to run the system, and university will provide these skills, and this kind of education will continue. It is the second part that is under great threat. Poets, writers, cultural activists, filmmakers, sculptors, artists. They are people who are watching, and they need support. We need to create this understanding that we are one. That state cannot divide us. Universities cannot make distinctions with this kind of knowledge and the other kind of knowledge. One set of knowledge is not better than the set of knowledge. We need all kinds of knowledge. And for everyone, it is that we prioritize which kind of education. Some people are meant to do, management, engineering, those kinds of things. Even in Vishwa Bharti, for example, today, we have now courses in computers, science, and all kinds of new tools that you require to live in this technological world. And it is gaining more and more importance. The cultural programs of Vishwa Bharti still remain scintillating, no doubt. But I wouldn't be able to make a statement saying that Vishwa Bharti is a university where nature, culture, women, beauty thrive. I would say they thrive, but they are in danger. Thank you very much. But I will still read that one passage from Gitanjali so that you understand, it affects us, that kind of imagination. That imagination is very important. So the first one paragraph of Gitanjali, then I will stop, for which he received Nobel Prize. Aurobindo was a God-loving man. He loved God. God not in any concrete form, idea. God, to whom he could say things. And this entire book is dedicated to that father, to whom he is communicating his desires. Where mind is without fear, and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come out from the depths of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert of sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee, where the mind is led forward by thee, in widening thought and action, to that heaven of freedom, my father, lit my country. This man is writing in colonial India, asking for a freedom for which all the nationalists are fighting, but he didn't want that freedom. He wanted a freedom where people will be equal, people will be free, in real sense, they will be equal. Because soon it was apparent, as the moment this country was created, elite was born. It of course came into the picture because they were the ones who were fighting. And majority of the people. India struggles with poverty still. India struggles with illiteracy still. Mortality rate, the child mortality rate and mother's mortality rate is still very high. In a recent index of climate sensitive countries and those who are dealing with climate aware manner, India is the last country. You know, Mahashweta Devi talked about, Mahashweta is a very big novelist from Bengal, and she went to Shantiniketan to study. In her diary, she noted that she was only 12 years old or something. She was amazed to see the neem tree. You know about neem? Neem is a very important plant. That, she was amazed, and it has shaped her aesthetic imagination for the rest of her life. That neem gives blue flowers, and that there are a variety of neem trees over here. You know, that kind of sensitivity towards nature, you don't even, I mean, we are not even looking at nature properly, and we're cutting down our trees, they're destroying. I mean, at this point, at the point of nature and culture, I would say there is a militarized, primitive accumulation of capital that's taking place. Still, I grieve, still inspire, still I hope that we will not disappoint ourselves by saying that we're forsaking the cause of beauty. That we do not feel that our senses are muted so much that it is not possible to bring them into our curriculum. With this kind of facts that I'm giving, these are the moments that we are realizing, moments we are facing at our present time. Other moments they're going to create new spaces for us. I am not, so sorry, I wanted to stop it here. You know, in India, universities like Nalanda. I don't know whether you know about this university. Nalanda perhaps was the biggest university in the world. Takshashila, great civilizations were destroyed. The walls of those libraries still exist. So what I'm saying is that the real possibilities of destroying universities, but the possibilities are stronger and real as much as destruction or possibility of destruction is there. There's a possibility of reconstruction. I will not be disappointed. You know, I will go and I'll make more. I'll create a bigger list than our second speaker created. Of collect all the data about their. These lives are not. These lives will be the inspiration for lives to lead better lives. This is how I feel. So, future of the university.
I see that there is actually a technical problem on Savita Singh's screen. I don't know if you're seeing the same thing or it's coming from me. Okay. You're also noticing this, right? I guess she was at the very end of her presentations anyway. So on her behalf, let me thank her for the great presentation, for this really touching and informative presentation. And I also want to thank everyone who have presented so far for their really thought-provoking, informative, really chilling in certain senses as well. That's really good for us to be vigilant and come to our senses. To start the discussion off, when people are writing on the chat, I want to actually start with two questions. One comes from me, on a question on the common threads of the speakers right now. The question that I want to formulate it is there any hope in the university? I mean, you're talking about this, and I find this as like a common thread in all of your conversations on your presentations. And Zeynep started with the increasing authoritarianization and the resistance that comes with it. But she ended with the point that there is still hope, right? We are still hoping that we are going to succeed and triumph in Boğaziçi. And then Yücel Demirer actually pointed out, listed all the ramifications of these pressures and authoritarianization, and on top of that, pointed out and sort of announced the demise of university. And then Ulaş Bayraktar pointed out a direction of creating something completely new instead of trying to stay or transform the university. But from Savita Singh, we saw a different trajectory that is to go back to an older form of university, an older promise of university, and transform this. So I thought this was a really interesting trajectory in the presentations, and it combines very nicely with the idea of a Marcusean idea, which I also want to chip in, which is this long march through the institutions. And Marcuse was very adamant and a believer of university, who was defending university institution against critiques very much. And he was saying we can actually change the society from within the university. We just have to take the time. But I also hear from this presentation, maybe we don't really have this tool anymore. We don't really have, or this instrument. University is actually very much under threat right now. Maybe we are at a point of a crossroads that we have to completely abandon it or find new forms, or what shall we do? And I just want to kind of throw it back to you with I know there's so much, but there is actually, because I think this is a very parallel question that comes from, let me read a question which is quite parallel to what I just formulated. That's why I want to pose them together. Meltem Ayska from Sociology Department, she asks, we have heard about Boğaziçi resistance on one hand, and there is the idea that university is dead. And then there is an experimentation with new forms, aesthetic modes of knowledge production. Can these ideas and practices be connected and bridged? A question for any panelist who wants to answer. So again, both of these questions for who would like to answer.
Shall I start?
Please.
Okay, so thanks for the questions. I think the two questions are very much sort of speaking to each other, and I would like to address them as such as well. So I think what really motivates me personally to be at the university is not to sort of, publish and sort of gain sort of academic, prestige or titles or whatever. It's more about touching and being together, learning together, producing together with my colleagues and with my students. And I think many of us have this idea that we would like to bring about change to address issues that are of concern to the whole of society or to some groups, issues like climate change, like environmental degradation, like social policy, you name it, right? And there, while doing that, also through collaborative sort of teaching techniques and collective projects and things like that, and teaching, to make it possible for students to internalize, and also us, actually, I have to admit, I mean, we also learn and socialize into this institution, and we learn the value of collective decision-making, democratic values, coexistence, you name it. So that's very valuable for me. And I think I could do that as well outside of the university. I'm not, obsessed with the idea of a formal structure. However, to be able to reach out to these wonderful students who also teach me a lot, I need the structure of the university. Otherwise, it's a bit more difficult to reach out to them. I know that Ulaş and the Koda school also are wonderful opportunities to meet up with the general, like with the people of those cities and coming from outside, giving speeches and taking part in workshops. So ideally, like that's also would have been a wonderful thing. But then again, there you would also maybe be preaching to the converted in a way. But then again, as I said, I mean, I think Ulaş and Kültürhane and Koda have found amazing ways of integrating and basically bringing in different groups from their contexts. But I think the two can be linked. So very recently we hosted the the results of a architectural project at Boğaziçi University. So students from MEF University, guided by their professor in the studio, were tasked to create a project around Boğaziçi University that would link the town and gown, right? So the university and its and the society around it and the neighborhoods around it. And there were such amazing projects that could actually create this university where boundaries do not exist, where students and basically non-students from around the campus or from the city itself could actually mingle with each other, could coexist in the same space, and these different structures at different sort of, you know, objectives. And I thought, you know, this is such a wonderful sort of opportunity, and seeing these kinds of projects, even if a couple of them gets, you know, executed, it would provide such valuable meeting grounds for the town and the gown, and it would really make a huge difference. So I think the two actually can be combined. Because I think universities will always have their institutional sort of, you know, boundaries and constraints. Although, as I said, even given these very restrictive sort of straitjacket that the military coup had tried to sort of install on all of us, Boğaziçi was creative enough to actually bypass some of these and create its own democratic, decentralized governance structure. But I think it's really important that that we bring those sort of different structures together to be able to reach out and also develop ourselves. Thank you.
Çetin, I'd like to say a couple of words. I need to thank Çetin, Gürer, and Meltem Ahuska for their questions, because those beautiful questions is helping to make myself more clear. First of all, I'm not imagining or suggesting a future without university. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm going to be brief and unfortunately blunt, maybe. But when I see the things are happening at Boğaziçi University, I cannot stop myself feeling that I have been there. You know, that's what we have been seeing in the provincial universities during the last 10 years. You know, just external, you know, just the hiring processes and the destruction of the committees and all of these new regulations have started years ago in the surrounding universities. And the reason that I suggest that strong statement or the display the death of university as a starting point is that you know, as you know, there are 172 universities in Turkey, and the things are happening at Boğaziçi or the, you know, at Kocaeli University or some similar examples are not the worst case scenarios. For instance, the things that I'm talking about, the daily lives in the university settings. For instance, recently for some personal connection, I attended a graduation ceremony in a provincial university, in a remote one. You know, just I cannot stop myself thinking about the future of university even in that context, because the whole scene was constructed as a Erdogan regime's, you know, as a kind of stage. The performances and the whole atmosphere was created to support the feeling that was tried to be created by Justice and Development Party and the recent chaos that I'm talking about. For that reason, what I'm trying to say, and both Çetin Gürer's and Meltem Ahuska's question returning to that, yes, it's possible and it's actually necessary to combine all these presentations and their thesis, but we need a new discourse. That's what I'm saying, you know, just, and I do not, personally, I do not underestimate any efforts for this cause, you know, just the civil society and the whole organizations and the political parties and all sorts of parties, it's necessary. But I believe, considering the special circumstances within the university context, the universities are not the any governmental agencies, you know, the people after our dismissal, for instance, I would like to briefly give an example to my department. In my department, in the political science department of Kocaeli University, we were dismissed. 6 academics were dismissed from the department. And after that, during the last 6 years, 7 or 8 new people were hired to the very same department. And these mindset started to already reproduce itself within that context. For that reason, I'm talking about a long-term project that we need to be ready for. For that reason, maybe I need to conclude by saying that we need maybe we have to be ready to start from the ground zero point. That's what I need to say.
Thank you so much. Just in the interest of time, let me just pose another question, two questions, in fact. These are directed to Ulaş Bayraktar. They are actually Greek questions, 2 Greek participants, and I'm emphasizing this because one of the questions that comes from Manolis Polikronides, I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name, sends solidarity from Greece. That's why I'm emphasizing this. Her question is, she says, were there any harassments from the state or its sympathizers while you were founding the Kültürhane? And please keep this question in mind, and I will read another one. Andy Lamas's question, which kind of parallel, it has various dimensions to it. He asks, within the Marxist and anarchist traditions, there is long-standing support for and critique of cooperatives and other alternative experiments within capitalist economy. The critique centers not on the consciousness of those who strive to create the cooperative, but rather on the way in which the capitalist market disciplines over time the cooperative, leading it towards conventional labor practices and small business consciousness. How are you combating this tendency? And he puts it in parentheses, I'm writing this as someone who enthusiastically supports what you are doing. So, Ulaş, these questions are for you.
Thank you. I just want to remind that I'm not a professor anymore and a merchant, so I'm not sure I will be able to answer these questions adequately. First, the harassment. I mean, it's very interesting, but no, because that's the privilege we had in Mersin, because this is a relatively democratic city, and we were, since it's a small city, everybody knew us, and even before our expulsion from the university, we had felt the solidarity from different groups, from different political parties, for political groups. We had the harassment not from the state, but from our own friends, let's say, because I mean, we are not acting in the conventional opposition way. We're not screaming slogans or demonstrating or crying for our crime. So we were just having a cafe, selling coffees and teas. So we were labeled very quickly as capitalist and as the ordinary shopkeepers. So that was a more important and stressing harassment we had from our friends. It's interesting, but yet no, we were just thinking that we will open the cafe and we would have to close it in a couple of months, because I mean, they can do everything from direct or indirect our harassment methods, but no, we didn't experience that until now. And the second, yes, that's a question we have always in mind. I mean, acting in the conventional rules of the of this system, there's of course a risk to be, let's say, domesticated, but I mean, I sincerely believe, even before this adventure, let's say, I sincerely believe in the principles of the Aikido. So this is, I mean, we receive a coup and we just try to turn it around and to take it away, because that not they expected. I mean, that's not they expected, because unlike other organizations, initiatives, we from the beginning we founded an enterprise. This is an business enterprise. Later on, we founded also an association with the same name, but it's an enterprise. So we have not a lot of relationship with the Ministry of Interior, for example. Just they come and they control our taxes and our bills. But so they were not expecting this move. But we try to keep in mind. I mean, we believe in degrowth. We are not trying to have branches all along. We don't want to have a bigger space, or yes, I have a dream of having opening a wedding house. That's another story. We need more space to organize weddings in our place, but we just keep it cool. We will see. I mean, we will see. Until now, I don't think that we crossed that red line of passing that tendency. I'm not sure whether if it's a satisfying response. But for the first question, I mean, that about whether we can combine these two methods, I mean, the resistance and the aesthetics. I hope so. I mean, that's all we have to do. This is an experimentation, and we just try to trigger some kind of inspiration. So it won't be a university, and it won't be a cafe library neither. So we will see something new, maybe with a new name, with a new nature, with a new institution. But I hope so. That's I mean, as I started the presentation, this is not because we're living in a very anti-democratic country. I think that's that's a must because of the change of the times. I mean, the change of paradigm. Thank you. Just I have to leave now because there's a graduation of my son. I'm very sorry, and I just want to repeat, it was a big pleasure to be here with you, and all you are invited and immersed in our little town shop here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Ulaş Bayraktar. Actually, on that note, maybe we should gradually end the session and not steal your rest times before we start the second session at 7 p.m. Which, I mean, I wanted to ask if you have any final remarks, maybe just 1 minute, an extra 1 minute, or otherwise I'm just going to end the session on time. Shall I do that? Okay. Oh, Savita has that's actually what I had in mind. Yeah. Savita, go ahead if you have a final remark.
Okay, the remark is that I'm very sorry that I had to sort of, go, something happened, I don't know what happened. I didn't hear questions and all that, but I must say that this conference has made me think through many issues. I mean, after a very long time, I read some of Tagore's novels, particularly his novel Gora and his Ghare Baire, on which Satyajit Ray made a film. So aesthetics or the aesthetic education can present new challenges in every era, that is liberal, Marxist, or fascist. And it is always a challenge for human beings to inculcate beauty. I think it's an unending, it's an everlasting, ever-going activity. It's the best one.
Thank you, Savita. It was a really amazing point to end. Thanks everyone for presenting and for joining and for your questions and comments. Sorry we weren't able to cover all the questions and comments came because of the time constraints, but the discussion is going to continue in just 1 hour. We'll reconvene at 7 p.m. and Charles Race and Andrew Finberg will be the presenters. So looking forward to seeing you there. Thank you.